Hi, everybody. We are greeting you from New York, Los Angeles, and Bourj this afternoon, this morning, this evening. We're going to have a panel of 4 people today. And then Tamar, one of our editors at HyeTert, besides other things that she does in life, I'll come back to that in a second. She's going to do the translation for us today. So we're going to talk about what happened in the last month in Beirut after the explosion that took place in August 4, 2020. A large amount of ammonium nitrate stored at the port facility at Beirut, as you may remember, exploded, and it caused at least 190 deaths, 6,500 injuries, and some 10 to 15 billion US dollars in property damaged, and leaving an estimated 300,000 people homeless. This came on top of other ailments that the Lebanese society was suffering at the time, including the economic meltdown and an array of demonstrations, which is, let's face it, since the last elections. So this came on top of it. Now, Armenian community, of course, along with other communities in Lebanon, suffered a great deal because of the proximity of the port to a certain Armenian neighborhoods, but also because of the fact that Armenians are also providing all sorts of services, health and otherwise, to the larger community in general. Therefore, we have Howard Karagheusian Health Center's staff together with us today, because they are obviously on the ground, and they are at the helms of the relief effort in general, and also for the community thereof there. So let me start by introducing everyone with brief introduction. Then I'm going to go over the bios, and then we're going to ask questions. And we're going to have also a Q&A session at the end of this panel today. So let me start by Christine Tanielian. Christine Tanielian is the Community Development Program Manager at the Howard Karagheusian Health Center. Thank you, Christine, for making the time for us today. We're going to come back to you with questions.
Yes,
Serop Ohanian is the director of the Howard Karagheusian Health Center at Bourj. Thank you for joining us a second time, enlightening us about the state of affairs in Lebanon. I mean, this is your second time here, because you also already sort of participated in another panel for COVID in May. Some of our viewers can remember. Raquelle Ketchejian is the program manager for the mental health care unit in Howard Karagheusian Center in Bourj. And Alique Berberian is a PhD student at environmental sciences at UCLA Fielding School of Public Health. And Tamar Karasu is the executive secretary of the Bible Society in Turkey, and she's also board member in Kalkmayan Foundation, Gümüşyan Foundation, and she is also one of the 3 editors of HyeTert, the host of today's sort of program. I would like to also thank 2 people and an organization today. Obviously, one of the main editors and the admin of HyeTert, Azad Can, and also Professor Raquelle of Oxford and the Armenian Diaspora Survey, because of their sort of generously lending us their technical abilities to be able to broadcast in 2 spaces on YouTube and Facebook. So let me then, I mean, Tamar is going to take off because she has to do the translation. Իսկապես ասիգա հայերեն մի դիլար, բայց իմ հայերենս չփավեր, որովհետև շատ դեսակ նյութեր կա, որ չեմ գնար հայերենով շարունակել, անոր համար Tamarը մեզի համար պիտի թարգմաներ, շատ մերսի Tamar. So let's start with Christine. Christine Parevner, let me give viewers a little bit about you, your education, your background. Christine graduated from Karagheusian University with a BA degree in social work. She's the head of community development programs and social work department at Karagheusian Center. She worked on women empowerment programs, run programs for dropout teenagers, and worked for Armenian refugees social adaptation in the past. She has been the chairperson of the Armenian Prelacy Social Committee and the Union of the Armenian Social Workers in Lebanon for 2 rounds. And she's also a member in Lebanese social workers syndicates. So she does a lot of things. She juggles a lot of things at one beat. As you see, this is, women's excellence, this whole panel, as you see. You're going to see more. So let me ask a general question to all of you. We're going to take Christine first, and I'm going to ask a general question to all of you, especially those of you who participated from Bourj Hammoud, obviously. Christine, John, where were you when the explosion happened, and how the people in the community react right after the explosion? What did the church do? How the Armenian NGOs handled the chaos?
Okay. Hello, first of all, thank you, Ayda, for being with you and being part of this panel discussion. I'm so grateful, and I hope we satisfy all the needs of your listeners. When the explosion happened, I was at home. I was with my children. We were sitting in the balcony. Luckily, we were at home. And when the explosion happened, like we felt the floor shook under our feet. We thought that it was an earthquake. And then after a few seconds, we heard the explosion sound. And as everybody did, we thought that something happened in our neighborhood. This was felt with every individual living in Lebanon, whether near or from the explosion place. So we ran to the television, and first we were informed that it was an assassination, and then after a few seconds, we knew that it was that huge and that explosion which destroyed the most beautiful part of our beloved country, Lebanon. How did the people react? Before how the Lebanese reacted after the explosion, it is very necessary to let people know that life in Lebanon wasn't paradise and it wasn't normal, it wasn't easy before the explosion. We already started with the October Revolution and then the coronavirus pandemic and the high rate of unemployment, devaluation of the Lebanese currency, unprecedented, let's say, inflation, like all these had already caused people to feel hopeless, and people were literally at the verge of hunger and starvation. And these are not just words, this is literally the case of our Lebanese people. What the explosion did, it just added the negativity, and it led people to extreme hopelessness. Fear, trauma, anxiety, all these were the aftermath of the explosion, which overburdened people with the already existing difficulties and problems. What the church did, it was very positive and very supporting. From just after an hour already, the Catholicosate around the 1st was on ground. He went to Bourj Hammoud, he visited the people, and he wanted to see by himself what has happened. And what was happened in Bourj Hammoud, it was really devastating, but compared to the explosion site, which was 4 kilometers away from Bourj Hammoud, it was really mass, and I don't know what to say and how to describe it. The church is already supporting till now, and it was after a few days that the Catholicosate already initiated a rehabilitation committee composed of the all Armenian denominations, religious and political. And together they are working to assess the needs of the community and accordingly to assist people, whoever got damaged with their homes or shops or anything. The Prelacy is already supporting people through Alique Bezikian Fund to 3,000 families with monthly cash supports. And the other organizations like the Armenian Relief Cross, they were already on ground from the 1st, 2nd. They were receiving injured people and trying to help them, as was Karagheusian Center. Serop will talk about it later. And all the Armenian organizations were on ground helping the people to reach out to the needy, the ones who needed emergency and immediate help.
obviously responding to trauma is something like a second nature to Armenians everywhere around the world, but
Yes.
maybe more so to Lebanese Armenians because you did this several times. So unfortunately, it sounds like you really are professionals in being on ground, like the minute something like this happens. So I remember, for example, in 2006, also, although of course it doesn't sort of compare to this in terms of precipitation and sudden, nature of this one, but there even Armenian sort of organizations were on ground helping everybody, not just Armenians, because the entire Lebanese, southern Lebanese were, affected. So a second question would be about what happened in the last month altogether, and what kind of plans your social institutions have regarding, community work, considering that Lebanon is already facing economic and political challenges. For example, we heard that some people, not all obviously, are leaving for Armenia, and then the diaspora organization also came in to help people to repatriate, at least maybe briefly, to Armenia. So what is the general inclination there?
Yeah. Just to start, what life is like since the explosion, I want to talk about our center, and it's like every other center, Armenian centers and Lebanese centers, of course. From the first day of the explosion, we as a social unit, we're on the ground. We are receiving people who are in need of even a daily meal. We have people who do not have to eat because of the unemployment, as we mentioned, and the high rent, and and the trauma of the explosion, about which Raquelle might be talking in a while. We have people who are afraid to leave their houses. We have children who are afraid when they see small light, or they don't leave their parents' hands because they are already traumatized and they cannot get out of it. Considering that in Lebanon, this might not be considered a last trauma or a last, let's say, something which might be repeated. So everyone knows this. Knowing this, all people are traumatized. We at Karagheusian Center, we are trying to people. We are providing food. We are providing even daily meals to around 100 families. We are, for this month, we already have provided food boxes to more than 800 families. We are collaborating with other agencies just to satisfy the needs of everyone. And for the moral support, we already have a virtual. We had in this virtual summer school already before the explosion. It was about coronavirus and how to help mothers be positively with their children and so on. But after the explosion, we changed our teams and it became trauma healing, how to help children not to fear from another explosion or something else. So we are doing this virtual calls because we already now have very high numbers of corona cases. Like today, we have more than 500 cases, and this is on daily basis. So what we're doing is trying to reach out to everyone on medical issues. Now, Serop will be talking. We are doing our best to be with them. What was the other question?
The next question was about people leaving to Armenia. Like, what is the inclination? Are people considering it, or is it something temporary that they're going to come back? What is the sort of mood in general?
Anyone who has the slightest hope of having a better life, a normal life anywhere, be it in Armenia or anywhere else, they would be leaving, because life in Lebanon is really very harsh and very difficult. And the ones who are already unemployed, already they don't have any house, private houses, they are leaving and they are trying in Armenia. And so far we have already 800 families since July who have left to Armenia. It's a big number considering our Armenian diaspora in Lebanon. So yes, we have some who are leaving, but on the other hand, we have the other part of the population of the Armenian community who insist to stay in Lebanon because we believe that things will get better, and like a phoenix, we will have a rebirth, and we will continue our community life in Lebanon, because Lebanon, as you know, is one of the most important part of the Armenian diaspora, and we have to keep it as hard as it is, as difficult as it is, but we should survive, and truly rehabilitation activities which give rebirth to this Armenian community in Lebanon.
My next question concerns rather the Lebanese relief effort in general. Could you please tell us a little bit about your organization's liaisons with the Lebanese relief efforts in general? Are they able to provide you guidance in your field, or are you alone? How the larger coordination is happening at this time?
Yeah. Now, I think for this question, Serop will answer, because he is the key person of doing all that liaisons. And thanks God, we are so proud that we are surrounded with national, international, and community-wise people who do support us, and they lend their helping hands to everything we do. Because in such cases, no one and no organization can survive alone. And thanks God, we are not alone.
Before my last question, one question, which is a small question, but a personal one. I mean, I guess a lot changed in your life since the explosion, but do you have any new personal or communal responsibilities? What is your day-to-day personal operation look like? Something that you didn't do before that you're doing right now? And also, let me ask you my final question so that we don't lose time in between. Anything that we can do for the community besides sending money? What are sort of the expectations from abroad?
Yeah. Our life, it did change. Of course, it changed. Like now we feel that we are on the ground for 24 hours, even if we are at home. Our cell phones have become a hotline because people have so many needs. And we as social workers, as a social institution, must be with them whenever they need us. This is what we believe that the mission of social work is. So our load is very heavy. Just people coming, asking for food, asking for help, asking for trauma healing. You know, it's the whole community devastated. And we as Karagheusian and other social organizations, I'm sure doing the same, we are there to help them whatever they need. What we ask from Armenians living abroad, you are already supporting us financially. We are very thankful for every individual who donated even a penny, because it's not the money, although the money means a lot in these days, but just thinking about us and being in our side means a lot to us. We need your prayers, we need your moral support, and your being with the Lebanese people as you're already doing. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Christine, for making the time, for participating. Hopefully we're going to have some Q&A. So let me just take this time to move to Serop Ohanian. Serop Ohanian is the director of Howard Karagheusian Health Center at Bourj Hammoud. He was born and raised in Bourj Hammoud. He studied at AGBU schools and then went to Ayda University and received a master's in business administration, then another master in public health, master's in public health from AUB. He began working in Karagheusian Foundation in 2003 as an assistant to the director. During 2011, he was assigned as CEO of the organization, leading a team of professional healthcare staff in managing the Syrian and Iraqi refugee crisis. In 2011, the center was treating 500 patients per month with a team of 40 people as staff. Right now, they're providing healthcare to 5,000 cases with a team of 120 people as staff. So, Pariegar Serop Can, thank you for making the time. We kept in we were in contact since the first day this thing happened, so I know most of this, but for our viewers, could you please tell us what happened? Or first of all, where were you when the explosion happened? Can you tell us immediate aftermath? Because you started working the next day, as far as I remember, with the mobile units right outside the building. This is what I remember. And what is a typical day at the center right now?
Hello. Ever since I started in the Karagheusian Foundation in 2003, 3 years later, 2006, there was this terrible war, and we faced lots of displaced people. And then in 2011, there was the Syrian crisis, and we were forced to provide healthcare services to the Syrian and Iraqi refugees. And now in 2020, we are at least coming from bad to worse, and we are providing best possible care. Unfortunately, over my career at the Karagheusian Center from 2003 till today, I witnessed more suffering and more difficulties among the people's life, amongst the Armenians and amongst the Lebanese, unfortunately. 2020, August 4, I am glad that we are alive, myself and my staff and crew members. We are grateful that the explosion happened at 6 p.m. instead of happening at 4 p.m. Already our center was packed. We were receiving 250, 270 patients per month. And there was this COVID pandemic, and we were providing
per day,
healthcare
actually, right?
per day. On that day, there were 270, 280 people in the Karagheusian Center, plus 120 staff. So we were, I don't know, you do the math. We were like 400 people. So the blast happened at 6 or 8 p.m. We were not in the center. The center is heavily damaged. The center is not destroyed. The center is heavily damaged. I was at home. I live in Antilles with my family and my kids. We sensed and we heard this huge blast. It was horrible. The kids started to cry. But in my private personal home, we did not experience damage, thankfully. So I received phone calls that Karagheusian Center is highly damaged. Please come immediately because the doors are open, and try to be there so that there will not be any sort of riot or theft. So I went there and I saw how terrible our center was damaged. It was not destroyed, it was damaged. And we started the cleaning up the process. I divided the team, the healthcare staff, into two parts. The first part started to provide wound care for those who come to our center to receive the necessary wound care. And the other team, we started the cleaning up process. We were not able to do huge number of wound care because of the load and because of the high load and because of the chaos. But we were glad that we referred many to go to receive wound care immediately to the Armenian Relief Society, in which they are our neighbors, and they did a tremendous, wonderful job on that night. So the other part of the staff, including myself, started cleaning. And after 24 hours, we made the center operational without windows, without doors, without electricity. But since we have our own private diesel engine generator, we were able to operate on our diesel engine generator and hence produce electricity. Therefore, after 24 hours, we started to provide healthcare services. The day one of our operational center, we received more than 300 patients where we provided healthcare services, specifically wound care for everyone, Armenians and non-Armenians, Christians and non-Christians, Lebanese and non-Lebanese people. And then from that day until today, we are still continuing to receive more than 300 patients every day, plus 100 social cases every day. So we're talking about 400 people per day coming to receive healthcare services at the Karagheusian Center with a team of 120 staff, including healthcare workers and social workers and psychosocial support people. Our organization, Karagheusian Center, we have two main divisions. Division number one, primary healthcare unit, Division number 2, social assistance and psychosocial support unit. The division number 1, which is a primary healthcare unit, is open for everyone, with a team of more than 50 physicians. We have daily 15 different clinics, meaning 15 different doctors available to welcome people. After 15 minutes, clients will go out, another clients will come in to receive healthcare. We have a variety team of doctors, such as pediatrician, cardiologist, endocrinologist, ENT physician, ophthalmologist, you name it, physical therapy, etc., where these people come and receive primary healthcare services and medicine and laboratoire, which means blood tests, lab services, as well as wound care. The second unit is the social unit, or I call it social assistance and mental health care unit, where Christine Tanielian and Raquelle Ketchejian are the ones in charge of this unit. Christine is the one in charge of Armenian community development initiatives, and Raquelle is the one in charge of mental health care unit and or a special educational needs unit. So this unit, social assistance, mental health care unit, primarily focuses on the Armenians, not because, just because of the capacity. Had we had a capacity, we would have also be able to provide more people. But because of the limited capacity, limited budget, we are barely able to provide per day 100 people, Armenians, Lebanese Armenians, Syrian Armenians, who are in need to receive social assistance and also a special educational needs unit. So this is my everyday life. In the Karagheusian Center, we are receiving 400 people. 300 are in the primary healthcare unit and 100 in the social assistance or psychosocial support unit. This is our daily load. We are open from 8 to 4, and we are there to provide best possible healthcare services for everyone with a team of 120 professionals, multidisciplinary people of healthcare workers, as well as social workers, psychologists, pharmacists, midwife.
Thank you.
Speech therapists, special educators, etc. Yeah.
Thank you,
Yep.
Serop, for obviously all of your services. And you in your sort of answers, you told that you have limited resources for certain services, which brings you to, obviously question what I asked also Christine. Can you also tell us a little bit about your liaisons, sort of community liaisons with the larger Lebanese relief efforts in general? Are they able to provide in your guidance in your field? Are you receiving any outside money from the government, if there is any, or are you alone in this?
The Karagheusian Center is part of the Lebanese National Primary Healthcare Network. So yes, Karagheusian Center is a private, non-profit, non-governmental organization, but we are registered as an NGO in the Lebanese government. We are part of the Lebanese National Primary Healthcare Network. Therefore, we are part of the coordination meeting between national and international interagency meeting, meaning personally, I myself go to this meeting once every 2 weeks. Now we are doing it virtually. There are international organizations such as all of the UN agencies and the World Health Organization, as well as the European Union and the government, Lebanese Ministry of Public Health and Lebanese Ministry of Social Affairs. Karagheusian is part of these agencies. We are professional in our work. We've been working in Lebanon since 1941. These international agencies, they know us. We have passed the accreditation process. We got our license and permit by the Accreditation Canada. We are a professional organization recognized by the international community. Therefore, we represent, our organization represent as part of the Lebanese national NGOs, And so that's why we received the president of the European Council in our center. We received the head of the USAID, Mr. John Barsa. We received the ambassador of the United States, Dorothy Shea, in our center. Also, we received executive director of World Food Program, Mr. David Beasley, to our center. So the international community, who are pretty much active in Lebanon, they are also considering Karagheusian Foundation as part of the consortium. So yes, we are not part of the Armenian consortium or the Armenian committee assigned by the Catholicosate Aram I, His Eminence Aram I, because this consortium must be part of the three Armenian head of the three Armenian churches and the three Armenian political organizations. Karagheusian is not part of any Armenian political organization, and Karagheusian is not part of any Armenian church-related affiliated entities. So that's why we were not part of this Armenian consortium. However, we are part of the Lebanese national interagency community because we represent nobody. We are not a religious entity, and we are not affiliated to any political party. We just do our job based on professionalism, based on continuity of care, and based on universal healthcare coverage. So that's why we are part of it. And I'm glad that our board of directors from New York are supporting our organization, and together with the international agencies, with the Lebanese Ministry of Public Health, and also, why not, with the Armenian community, we are doing our best on a daily basis to provide the best possible help and support to our people in the catchment area of Bourj.
My last question would be about COVID, because obviously this is an ongoing problem besides the explosion, and then the fall season is coming, and everywhere the health professionals are expecting a second wave of sorts. So my last question would be as follows: how's the pandemic going in Lebanon in connection with the explosion? Do you have enough PPE? And what is the COVID tableau and expectation for the fall, in general? Because there's going to be a very long fall and winter, it looks like, for especially health professionals, but also for the community.
I didn't hear you. Okay, wait. Hello?
I can repeat. Let me repeat.
Yes, please.
So
Yes,
my
please.
last question was about COVID response right after explosion, because this is an ongoing problem and we are expecting a second wave of COVID. Therefore, I'm wondering whether you have enough PPE, and what's the COVID tableau right now in Lebanon in general and around your clinic, and also what is the expectation for the fall and winter in terms of COVID?
Mute. All right. Now, are you hearing? Hello. Yes. We do not have enough PPE. But today I received a call from the French delegate. The president of Republic of France, Monsieur Macron, is in Lebanon. So today I received a phone call from the French delegate, and within the next 2 days we will be receiving enough PPEs, masks, and hygiene kits. So that our staff would be using, and so that we will also be distributing to others. Within the next 2 weeks, we will be receiving food aid from USAID, 250 food parcels that we will be distributing, and the international and the World Food Program also will be distributing another 250 food parcels. So our center is pretty much active in collaboration with the international community, non-Armenian community, non-sectarian, non-political parties, so that all of us together, we may be able to provide the best possible services. The COVID is challenging, but just like any other organization, any other healthcare center where there is a huge load of patients, We are there to provide the best possible care. We made a wonderful gesture with the support of our board. We made everything for free, 100% for free. Anyone who needs to receive primary healthcare services has the right to receive affordable, attainable, accessible, high quality of primary healthcare services. He can come to the Karagheusian Center for free to receive doctor's consultation, laboratory services, physiotherapy services, and wound care, also ophthalmology services and eye-related outpatient examination. This is a special initiative from our center, supported by our board. Also, it's a first step to announce the 100th anniversary of the Karagheusian Foundation that was started in 1921. Today is 2020, and we are here to provide the best possible primary healthcare services, as well as mental health care services and social assistance services to our people, to the people in our area, in collaboration with the international community, European Union, USAID, World Health Organization, and others.
Thank you, Serop, for your time. I'm going to ask one last question in the Q&A session if we don't get any questions from our audience. Let me move to Raquelle Ketchejian. Parev Raquelle, thank you for coming. As I told at the beginning, Raquelle is the program manager for the mental health care unit at the Howard Karagheusian Health Center in Bourj Hammoud. She's trained in psychology and social work. She has an MA in clinical psychology. She's been working at the Karagheusian Health Center for the last 20 years as a social worker and also mental health department manager. She's also the head of the Armenian Social Workers Union. She teaches psychology and education to BT and TS degrees, which are technical degrees, at Serop Technical College for 25 years, and also Karagheusian College. She's also an officer in the Governmental Examination Committee in Lebanon for examination of the same kind of technical BT and TS degrees for education and psychology majors. Thank you again for making the time. Let me start asking you, can you unmute yourself? Raquelle, yes, thank you. Let's start with the general question of where were you when the explosion happened? What was your daily load of patients before the explosion, and whether there are any dramatic changes in between explosion and now?
Yes. To start with, where I was with at the time of the explosion, I was in wherever the explosion, almost in the site of the explosion. I was in Ashrafi area. I was at a mall on the roof, all glass around us, and I was there with a friend, and we heard the plane, and then we felt the earthquake feeling, and then the first bomb, and then the second one, and then I flew somewhere, and then we had to rush out, and it was horrible. Every time I remember the first moments and how we ran, how I was on the ground, and then we were trying to get out of the mall. It was really very horrible, and I still, every time I think of that day, I don't know how we survived. I don't know how I got home. I drove my car over glass and window panes, and everybody there was like, you see faces, all blood, people holding their heads, holding some people on the streets lying. It was, once I got out of the mall and we looked around, there was another shock. Like, you see, it's not the mall that was targeted, it's the whole place, it's the whole area that's blown up. Like, you see everywhere destroyed. It was a horrible experience. I couldn't get over it for a short period of time. I didn't sleep at home for 2 days, and then I had to work on myself and get back home and stay here because my home is far away from the explosion area, but I couldn't stay at home alone. I stayed with my parents, It was horrible. Today, yes, I'm much better. I'm working on myself still. But all I can say is it was difficult. I cannot still drive there. I cannot go to Ashrafi area. I cannot go to the explosion area. I cannot think of myself driving in that area at all.
Oh, so it looks like the mental health care unit director also perhaps needs some mental health, like
yes, definitely.
help. Are you
Yes.
getting any, like your staff, are you getting any like PTSD sort of help yourself?
Psychological debriefing, yes. Basically, we will talk about that later on. You had two questions. One was where was I? And then
the second one was about what is your daily load of work before the explosion?
Before and after, yes. Before and after. Now, as everybody else said, before the explosion, everything was quite bad for the Lebanese people. Not only the Armenians, everybody, because of the lockdown, so many people were jobless. So many firms and like joints and many food chains, for example, etc. All of these places who had so many workers and employees, all of these places were closed. We were sort of having trouble getting food to people who were jobless and who had children at home, and we were striving with that. Okay, and then the explosion. It was the end of almost, it looked like the end of everything. Like people were driven to helplessness, hopelessness. It was so bad for everybody. The feeling of when you talk to people, you find that they always have a need, even if they got some help. Okay, we're struggling. Today, we're struggling with that. Like if the social worker provides food provision to a family, why? Because they're never safe. They think they're not okay and they need more aid if anything happens, if something more happens. And there's always this news on the media that something else will happen, and people try to foretell things. Like they keep saying something will happen in Bourj Hammoud and something will happen at the airport, something will happen in Tripoli. I don't know. So every time such news gets about, you find people terrified for asking more for help, besides they being in need of a lot of help.
So in terms of workload, were you receiving more patients? Did you start?
Now we receive a lot more patients. Okay. Now we receive so many more. And it will get higher. The numbers, especially in mental health, now it's a month since the explosion, but this is the time when people will realize their traumas. You see, Lebanese people always think, if I'm alive, if I survived, then I'm okay. But that's not the case. Then comes the trauma effect. Then comes the awakening of what really happened. We lost so many people, young people. It was so unexpected that nobody was ready to take cover, to have some shelter or find some place to run away. It was so devastating. Like devastating is the right word to explain the whole situation. We will, I believe, from now on, we will have people realizing how much they need help.
So you're basically saying that it's going to come protracted a little later.
Yes.
They're going to realize in time.
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
So are there any vulnerable segments of the community who are more affected psychologically by the explosion? I mean, Christine talked a little bit about kids, so I'm guessing would be more, touched by this.
Kids and adults. There are people who are closer to the area of the explosion. Everybody in Lebanon is traumatized. Okay, because it's not that this caused the whole trauma. We are traumatized gradually, bit by bit, and so on. We have it. Okay, we have our fears, anxiety, stress. Before the explosion, we used to treat the stress disorders, the stress-related problems, anxiety, depression, and so on. After the explosion, the people who were closer to this area, to the explosion area, people who lost people, family members, people who had injured family members, children who were present at the time of the explosion, the sound of the explosion, the effect of the explosion, the losing of homes and losing of cars, for example. For children, these are things that are above their comprehension. So someone has to make it clear to them what happened, to debrief the whole thing and validate their fears, for example, make them understand why they are afraid, and then help them see that it's okay, like they can go on. It's quite tough, but you have to give them their space to grieve, to cry, to feel whatever they're feeling, and then try to overcome their worst state. By saying this, it doesn't mean in Lebanon, simply because, as I said, simply because we're always prone to have something new, probably not on this scale, but at a different scale. But something new is always somewhere cooking, and therefore you never get this I'm okay feeling, like today I'm okay. It's always today I'm okay, and next day we'll see what will happen. Okay. As for help that we're providing, okay, all over Lebanon, the government, the Ministry of Health, has provided by NGOs and international NGOs. They are training people, young people, psychology students, for example. They are always on, there is a hotline now, and people can call for their depressive states or their depressed mood or other emotional states that they cannot really deal with. They're calling, they can call the hotline of the Ministry of Health. We at Karagheusian have added numbers of psychology, mental health providers in the clinics, in the medical department, which is new for us. In the medical departments, now we have mental health workers who are there to reach out. It's not like people have come to ask for mental health care, but we have mental health providers who reach out to those people who have come for any medical need, and they ask them questions. They try to psychoeducate them, and then they create some awareness of what they feel and how they, the physical health and the emotional health, they try to create some awareness of the link between the two, so that they, in their turn, the people, can follow up on their emotional and mental health as well. Like, so it is really important.
Sorry for interrupting. I gather basically they are screening for depression and whatnot, even if they do not come for depression per se. So they are doing a regular screening for all patients coming in.
Yes, like the vital signs that the nurse takes, there is another person, the psychologist, who asks questions about depression and of course stress and anxiety and so on, anything related to depression, stress and anxiety and trauma. And then they psychoeducate these people, what they can do, where they can go, and how their feelings and physical pain are related, etc. And we try to guide them towards a healthier solution, like seeing a psychologist if need be, or counseling them, short counselings, debriefing them with the problems they had. I don't know. We provide the mental health on different levels. Like these people in the medical department are huge help for us. And you can see people's positive reaction to it.
I see. One small question about, like, especially the Armenian community, which I forgot to ask earlier. Is there any like group therapy options available for Armenians at this time? Those who suffer from PTSD, are they able to come together in a group that they're able to, talk to each other? Or is it like on on person-to-person basis?
Yes. The problem with group, for example, Christine is a community worker and she has groups, but because of the COVID-19, group concept is not really very encouraged, like because of the explosion, people were so close to each other and so much happened during and after the explosion, of course. People got together, people tried to help each other and so on, but then there was the problem of wearing the masks, being safe, and so on. Now, gathering them in a group format is a little bit risky these days. That's why we're not considering it yet. We want to, but it's not yet possible for us for the time being. Whereby I want to shed some light on children's needs. As Serop was saying, that we have another department for children with special educational needs, where children receive mental health care, speech therapy, etc. All the special needs that they can get, we have them. This section was the creation, or the beginnings were with Mrs. Hasnik Donayan. She's leaving and she's coming to, she's traveling to Armenia now. And that's why I am taking over from her. Now, in this center, we're taking care of children who have traumatic, who were in traumatic situations and who had trauma. We have people specialized for children's mental health care, and they're providing them trauma therapy in this center specifically for Armenian children. Okay, we will probably have other children as well, but for the time being, we're only Armenian targeting institution for the time being.
Thanks a lot, Raquelle. We're going to come back to you during the Q&A. And right now I'm going to move to Alique. Alique, first of all, thank you for waiting all this time. We're not too off in terms of timing. We're like maybe 7-8 minutes like behind, but we're good. Hopefully we're going to be able to wrap on time. Let me just introduce you to our viewers one more time with your short bio. Alique Berberian is a PhD student in the Department of Environmental Health Sciences at the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health and a research assistant at the Columbia Center for Children's Environmental Health. Her research focuses on prenatal and early childhood exposure to ambient air pollution and the health and economic benefits of climate change mitigation strategies in the energy and transportation sectors, with a particular focus on children and disadvantaged communities. So we couldn't have had a better match for this program, actually, as you see. She holds a master's in public health and environmental health sciences and a master's in international affairs from Columbia University. Welcome back, Alique. Let me start by asking you what was going on in Lebanon prior to this explosion, because Lebanon had all sorts of environmental hazards and issues prior to the explosion, which got exacerbated with the explosion. So what was some of the most important environmental hazard that threatened the Lebanese people before this explosion?
Sure. Thank you so much, Ayda, for that very kind introduction. And thank you to all the panelists for sharing your experiences and for all of the really hard work that you're doing on the ground. Thank you. So I'll begin by focusing on two examples of environmental hazards that the Lebanese population has faced prior to the explosion, and those are outdoor air pollution and water pollution, specifically related to improper waste management. So in terms of outdoor air pollution, the main sources of this have been from on-road transport and the power sector, as well as some industrial activities. And I'll note that these sources of pollution from fossil fuels are not necessarily unique to Lebanon and are seen in all countries around the world. They're major contributors to climate change. So first, regarding traffic-related pollution, as we know, the majority of people in urban areas in Lebanon rely on car transport because other transportation infrastructure like bike lanes or public transportation options like buses or shared minivans are not necessarily accessible or reliable, and some systems are poorly managed. So this leaves most people to commute to work and commute to school and travel on a daily basis using personal vehicles. Also, motorcycles, trucks, and different cargo vehicles are major contributors to traffic and to traffic-related pollution. And I'll also add, because cities like Beirut have such dense populations, there are many vehicles driving on the roads that are in close proximity to where people live, which means that those living near these major roadways are breathing in traffic emissions. So another contributor to outdoor pollution that is common in Lebanon is diesel power generation, which is largely due to the reality that the country hasn't had the capacity really to supply 24-hour electricity to all households. So this leaves many homes to generate their own electricity or to rely on private neighborhood suppliers. And the emissions, of course, from these diesel electricity generators are huge contributors to air pollution. Now, in addition to these main outdoor pollution sources that have existed on the long term, the more recent widespread burning of trash and the recent wildfires have really contributed to the already high levels of pollution across Lebanon. So we know that the fires last fall were among the worst that the country has seen really in many decades. And there were about 100 fires in the forests that were likely started because of unusually high temperatures, because of strong winds and dry conditions in the forests. And all of these are related to climate change. There was also little preparation that was done, and few resources were available to prevent the fires and then to be able to manage them. And also because many urban areas have begun to sprawl and expand beyond city centers, many people lived nearby and faced some risks from these fires. Next, the burning of trash, as I'd mentioned, has been another environmental hazard and a threat to human health, which is common practice in many places in Lebanon and across the world, but really became prominent in Lebanon during the 2015 trash crisis. And it's important to remember that not only is the open burning of trash dangerous because of smoke and particle inhalation, but it's also very preventable. And there was little to nothing that was done by authorities at the time to control or to prevent this. Lebanon does not have a solid waste management plan for the entire country. And the waste management plans that did exist in Beirut and Mount Lebanon, where there was a lot of open burning happening, essentially weren't operating. Now, in terms of water pollution, particularly pollution in the Mediterranean Sea, this has largely been from dumping waste into water sources and also due to land reclamation, which in this case was the process of adding to the coastline by extending landfill sites into the sea. And this could be, of course, very dangerous because potentially toxic liquids and chemicals from household cleaning products or heavy metals that are in the waste can seep into the sea. Also plastic, which we know doesn't decompose like food waste, for instance, does, could end up in the sea. Now, once the water source is polluted, it's dangerous to swim in it. It could contaminate ocean life, making it unhealthy to eat the fish from the ocean. So in summary, the trash issue really has a lot of compounding effects from contaminating both the water and the air. And then lastly, I'll say in terms of the health impacts of outdoor air pollution, there's global research that has shown that exposure to air pollution, especially exposure to very fine particulate matter, which can be inhaled and can enter the lungs and even the bloodstream, can cause respiratory illnesses like asthma, can cause cardiovascular disease. Long-term exposure can cause cancers, and can also cause different adverse birth outcomes. For instance, when babies are exposed while still in the womb, this might lead them to be born preterm, which is born too early, or could be born at a low birth weight. And these birth outcomes can cause health issues throughout a child's entire life. Children can also experience developmental issues like autism or ADHD that a lot of the literature has showed, particularly because when the young are exposed during periods where their brains and their vital organs are developing, the toxic components in air pollution can affect their growth and can cause real harms to their health. We know that exposure to outdoor fine particulate matter is a leading risk factor of death worldwide, and it accounts for about 4 million deaths every year across the world. And although we know air pollution is a global issue, exposure can really be most dangerous for pregnant mothers, for children, for those with other underlying conditions like cardiovascular or respiratory illnesses, and to those particularly with poor access to medical services or to primary care services. But really the important thing to remember is that many of these illnesses and deaths related to air pollution exposure are preventable, and if avoided, can result in huge economic and societal benefits.
Thank you for the first part of our sort of Q&A. The second question is going to be about the explosion itself. This fertilizer that got exploded at this port. Are there any similar explosions that happened, like this explosion where there is release of huge amounts of the same kind of, material to the air? And what kind of health implications, short and long term, should the community expect at this time?
Sure. So the explosion, as we know, was triggered by a fire and caused by about 3,000 tons of ammonium nitrate, which is a chemical compound that's used as a fertilizer. And the blast is one of the largest accidental ammonium nitrate explosions ever recorded. And as we know, it hit Lebanon in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic and in the midst of an economic crisis. And this is really what sets this explosion apart from the other environmental hazards that I had mentioned and from other similar incidents that may have happened, explosions that have happened in other places or other times. It's also the sheer scale of the explosion and the location of it being in a dense city that sets this apart. Now, in terms of the direct health consequences, apart from those, of course, related to the physical trauma, the bodily injuries, the psychological trauma, and the long-term anxiety and stress that the explosion will continue to cause, some long-term and short-term health effects might include respiratory and cardiovascular illnesses, cancers, and other diseases that exposure to particularly toxic dust and inhalation of particles from the explosion could cause. These are some of the health effects that actually were seen after other disasters like the collapse of New York City's World Trade Center towers, for instance, in the September 11th attacks. Similarly, the collapse of the buildings released lots of debris and dust, which were very harmful when inhaled. I'll just say firsthand that my specialty is not in atmospheric chemistry or chemistry of any sorts, but when the ammonium nitrate exploded through chemical reactions, there were large amounts of nitrogen dioxide gas that were created and released into the air. And we know nitrogen dioxide was what created the reddish color of the large mushroom cloud that we saw after the explosion. And we know nitrogen dioxide can be harmful to health, can cause respiratory problems like asthma, other respiratory irritation. But according to some reports that I've seen from atmospheric chemists in Lebanon and from other experts, it's likely that those gases would have dissipated soon after and would not necessarily have long-term health effects. So instead, the greater health risks are likely related to exposure to materials like asbestos, lead, and dust from the buildings that were demolished. Or we might also see some health effects from other hazardous substances and chemicals that may have also been stored in the warehouse or near the port that also exploded. But at this point, there are still very many unknowns about what exactly burned down in the warehouse and around it, and lots of unknowns about the composition and characterization exactly of the particulate matter that was released into the air after the explosion. But in terms of the risk of exposure to asbestos particles from the demolished buildings, and we know that asbestos has been used in construction for some time, so it's likely that especially the older demolished buildings had it in there. So exposure to it is a significant concern. Breathing large amounts of it can cause illnesses like mesothelioma, which is a cancer of the membrane that covers the lungs. Could also cause lung cancer, and COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And similarly, there's also risk of exposure to lead from old water pipes, for instance, in the buildings that may have been demolished. And that can also be very dangerous, particularly to children as their brains are developing. Lead can have a lot of harms on children's brains. So again, at this point, there's still a lot to learn about the toxic particles and the dust that's in the air right now. But there could very likely be a combination of these toxic substances accumulated in the dust that's in the air, on the roadways, on cars, and on other surfaces across the city. And lastly, I'll just end by adding that a lot of the very tragic consequences of the explosion are related to the damages to the nearby hospitals, which were already very strained, as we know, by the pandemic. People weren't able to get immediate medical attention, which maybe cause them to die prematurely, or maybe cause them to experience potential long-term consequences from injuries that they otherwise would not have experienced if the hospitals weren't so impacted and care was more readily accessible. So all of these compounding effects, together with the trauma, stress, and anxiety that people are suffering from, really made the explosion very devastating and really incomprehensible.
It seems like there's no escape out of this, because my last question was going to be more about prevention, any recommendations that you can give, given the situation. But it seems like this is like life hazard, And when you were talking about the pipes and whatnot, immediately the Michigan Flint pipe, lead pipe cases sort of came to my mind, and how easy and how difficult, was the solution. And still we're dealing with it. I read, maybe this was like a week or 10 days ago, that the court case finally decided about some reparations or some money that were being awarded to the families. But up until now, people do still suffer. They're not water safe. So I do not know really how much Lebanese government is going to be able to then provide to be able to assess this, the kind of lead and other polluters that are probably in the air, and how to prevent, further pollution. But what are briefly your sort of, if you have anything to add in terms of prevention, given the conditions, any recommendations?
Sure. So we won't end on a bad note. There could be some good news with prevention, but I'll start by saying right now, air quality monitoring and testing has been difficult during these times because of limited resources and limited equipment. So it's not yet known what exactly is in the air and what the degree of harm is. So it's difficult to say exactly what kind of risks people are at, and therefore how they can protect themselves just from general air pollution exposure. But at this point, I'd say that it's really important to control exposure to toxic dust. People should follow protocols, especially to protect themselves while they're taking part in cleaning up clearing away rubble or tearing down damaged structures. Some of these protocols include wearing personal protective equipment like protective clothing, long sleeves, long pants to be able to protect your skin. If available, masks that filter the air so that you're not inhaling these particles, gloves to protect your hands, goggles to protect your eyes, and also really importantly, making sure to dispose of the rubble and the debris in designated hazardous waste sites. I'm not sure the degree to which these exist, but it would be very helpful to dispose of these properly to prevent further exposure to them. So these are some ways to minimize personal risks. I'll also say that luckily and hopefully people were wearing masks during the time of the explosion when they were outdoors, and people are likely continuing to wear them now because of COVID. So with that, there was and continues to be a degree of protection there. Finally, I'll say at this point, it's extremely important now more than ever for people to remain vigilant in preventing the spread of COVID, which would really exacerbate all that's going on now. We know the healthcare system's already overwhelmed. And also very importantly, because exposure to toxic pollutants following the explosion, compounded with the already high levels of normal daily air pollution exposure, can really exacerbate COVID symptoms and could lead to worse health outcomes. We've seen a lot of research in the US and from other countries that show this. So of course, another recommendation is for people to continue to follow public health guidelines and remember, we're still in a pandemic. Of course, social distancing might be hard right now because people are on the streets cleaning up and rebuilding. And of course, isolating might also be difficult because friends and family might be living together in one household due to people losing their homes. But it's really important for people to do their best to make sure they're wearing face coverings or masks properly, remaining 6 feet apart from one another. And of course, and this is so obvious, since people are suffering from so much trauma and stress right now, it's really critical to check in on one another and to ensure that you and those around you have a support system.
Thank you very much, Alique. Thank you very much again to all our panelists. Now I have to look at our sort of Facebook page because I see 122 comments are there. Some of it probably are Tamar's translations, but there may be questions buried under it. So let me contact Tamar to see whether there are any questions that we can take in. Alique, I'll try to get your questions first, if any, but let me check. We are very good in terms of time. We finished in 70 minutes, you know, that's good. So bear with me, please. This takes some time because it doesn't load properly. Let's see. It's kind of difficult for me to see because it ran like crazy. I don't know how to check it. Hold on. Hold on. You know, Facebook changed the interface and it doesn't let us go back to the earlier versions of Facebook right now. And I used to see, you know, the entire lineup for the questions. I can only see right now the last 5 entries, which are Tamar's translations. I'm sure somewhere the questions are buried. Please hold on for a second. Tamar, if you hear me, could you please let us know if there are any questions, because I'm not able to see the entire feed for some reason. I can only see the last 5 entries. Tamar Jan, let me try. Sorry about this. This never happened before.
There are comments of encouragement, not questions.
Yeah, there are common comments of encouragement and like thanks, and not many questions. Let me ask our panelists, whether if you want to ask Alique anything or vice versa, so that we have that kind of connection. I know you 3 of you are working together, so that's why I'm not asking you to ask yourselves questions, but maybe to Alique.
I would like to talk about what Alique said about the hospitals. And she was saying it was devastating because the hospitals were, again, affected by whatever happened. The hospitals that are around that area, many of them were completely down, and their patients and the nurses, there were deaths among the nurses, there were patients who died, the emergency room and the ICU unit, and all of these places, there were there are stories that really make you I don't know, it's above the capacity of human understanding of how can these things happen, why should this happen, and why should we go through this. So many questions, so many people have if stories, if I were there, if I had been at my work, if I had been here or there. So many if stories, so many people not only not getting over whatever happened to them, but also thinking about if this so and so, what would have happened, and so on. Like, yes, you're right, Ali. The hospitals weren't able to accept people. On the contrary, they were sending away their patients to other hospitals, and even some patients got to Tripoli, which is quite far away from the area, but they were taken there simply because the hospitals in the area were not able to accept patients at this point.
There are a couple of questions about Lebanese side of this. So Alique, if you have to take off, you can take off, because I know you were gonna sort of run back to your work. And let me continue with it's up to you. I don't know.
I'll stick around for a little.
Okay, you'll stick around for a little. Okay, so one question is from Karabetchekem, who's one of our Bosa High members. He's asking more of a general question about the future of Lebanon generally, but I also understand in terms of operations, healthcare, etc. It's a general question to all Lebanese.
The future of Lebanon, that's the question?
Yeah.
Not, it's blurry, We are still, it's not clear yet. And we don't know if it's gonna be clear or if ever has been clear or not. So we don't know.
You don't know. What about like the helping sort of communities? Because there's another question by Ketchejian. He's asking whether how much of a help the surrounding countries who could, technically speaking, help you, but then they are buried in their own sort of, COVID and also other, obviously, around Lebanon, all countries, all Arab countries especially, have been destroyed in one way or another in the last 15 years or so, or even longer. So are they able to help, that is, Lebanese reconstruction efforts? The Gulf countries, or we heard from Turkey, but I don't know how much of a help Turkey was able to send. so what's going on in terms of international coordination, not the European Union, but more regional?
What I can say that international community is stepping in to help Lebanon. Nowadays, we are leaving that as we are seeing the president of Republic of France and delegates are in Lebanon. They are still in Lebanon, and they are helping Lebanon politically, economically, socially, also in health-wise, so that Lebanon may be able to rise again. Politically speaking, this has been shaken, and we would expect to see changes in the political era. Armenians are minorities in Lebanon, and Armenians are united to one another, and they are trying their best to help their people. The government of Armenia and the government of Artsakh also is helping the Armenian community. So I don't know the neighbors. What could neighbors help? However, what I am seeing, what I am sensing, that this could be the start of a crossroad where Lebanon be moving into another phase? I don't know. Over the past 30 years or more, 40 years, Lebanon was at war. And then after 1991, when the war ended, the warlords became involved in the throne. They became the head of the throne. And now, I don't know. We are in a non-profit NGO, non-governmental organization. We are here to help. We are here to provide best possible healthcare and social assistance services to the people. So I don't know, government to government speaking, I don't know what will happen. Until now, we have seen the absence of the government. That's why the NGOs are active. I mean, imagine we are an organization that we are playing a role, maybe not 100%, but we are playing a role of the government in providing healthcare, in providing social services, in providing psychosocial support, where these services must have been provided by the government in civilized countries. So I don't know. I don't know where the future of Lebanon will be, or I don't know how much the neighboring countries would be involved. It's all about politics. But one thing I know, that we're gonna pass through this with our collective efforts. Everybody's getting involved with the diaspora, the government of Armenia, the church leaders, all of us coming together hand in hand to provide best possible support for our people in this area, in these dark corners of the world.
In an interesting way, as we talked about it last time in May, you would remember, Serop, the COVID has brought us together in many ways that nothing else brought us together before. Like there had been so many countless online panels, forums, get-togethers, talking about a variety of issues about our institutions in respective countries and whatnot. And Armenians are not a stranger to all this, because Armenians, despite the fact that we have a state within the larger Soviet Union, really they are the masters of operating without a state wherever they are. So they are stateless state people. So in other words, they have been, obviously we have the state, but because of Soviet Union, that was not necessarily sort of the kind of state that we have right now. So for us, this has become a kind of a rare instance in our history, I believe, where despite all this, extreme sort of darazvil, I think, extreme, what is the term even? Spread out, we're able to come together at this critical juncture in time, as try to find general solutions to individual problems that these sort of communities are facing wherever they are. Because especially Middle Eastern Armenian communities have faced a great deal of, again, destabilization along with the Arab communities in the Middle East in the last, since 2001 at least. So this has been an ongoing process, Iraqi Armenians, then Syrian Armenians, then now Lebanese Armenians. So it's one thing after the other. And it's really, so we're really losing blood on the one hand in terms of numbers. But on the other hand, it seems like we're finding ways to still struggle and, survive. That is what we excel.
As Alique said, it is devastating and it is incomprehensible. She was talking about environmental health. So I'm going to use those words, if you allow me, Alique. It is devastating and it is incomprehensible, not just environmentally speaking, but also socially, economically, financially, health-wise, all of this. Yes, it is devastating. It is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking for us to see every day 400 people coming to our healthcare center, coming to our facility to receive healthcare services. I mean, who would come to a private, non-profit organization to receive healthcare, to receive social assistance, to receive food? It's devastating. It is heartbreaking. It's not easy for us, for myself and my staff, to shut down fires, rhetorically speaking, every day. But these type of discussions, your support, your encouragement, your prayers as Armenians overseas, as diaspora, as government of Armenia, as others, your solidarity, your support, financially, non-financially, the greater Armenia, the diaspora, by telling us, hey, Lebanon, you are not alone. We will be there. We don't know how we're going to help you, but we're going to help you. We're going to be there overseas. And one way or another, we want you to know as Lebanon that one way or another, we will be there. Yes, we are seeing many Armenians leaving Lebanon and they are going to Armenia. Yes, we are seeing many younglings, the brain drain, who are leaving Lebanon and going elsewhere. But as an organization, we are here, and we're trying our best. It is not comprehensible. It is devastating. Yes, it is. But at the same time, we have to be realistic. But there are people over here who rely on us. And with our collective effort, we will continue. We will continue to be here. We will continue to provide the best possible healthcare and social services to the people within our area.
Thank you, Serop. Thank you all. If you have anything to add, I see Raquelle's hand.
Yes.
We will also be here. I will check on you again in a couple months. We're not going anywhere, because you know how it goes with the social media. Everybody's interested, like in a split second, and then forget sometimes. That's not going to happen. We're going to follow you. Let me hear from Raquelle.
I just want to say, you were saying that this disaster, as well as the COVID, made us reach out as Armenians, as people, okay, and help each other. I met such people during these last few months, starting with the COVID problems and then the disaster. People from different countries, young people. I met a young lady from Amsterdam, for example, who alone tried to gather loads of help. And she came once, she's coming again. Another lady, again, Lebanese, who's working in Dakar. She, on calls and everything, she made possible so many different things. They're helping, people are reaching out. Armenians for Armenians from outside to Lebanon. Yes, there is a huge wave of help that's coming here. And that's really awesome. Like you feel happy that people outside do realize the importance of lending a hand, a helping hand here. Now, you were asking at the beginning of our conversation about the form of the sort of help we need here. If money or other forms of, you see, money is the only thing that really makes the real workers, the field workers, people who are working, the frontline workers, that is the social workers and so on. If it's money that's coming to us, we can give it a form depending on the need of the immediate environment and the immediate needs of the beneficiaries, whoever the beneficiary is. Sending food provision is helpful, again, but sometimes they're so repeated and everybody is sending almost the same sort of food types that people start saying, well, we have this, but we need other things to support us, and so on. So there should be some balance between money support, food support, and other medical, or for example, one lady, this Amsterdam lady was asking if we need diapers and oxygen machine and so on. And she's working on getting these things to Lebanon. No, she's working, but as she realized different things, I'm hoping she will make this come true as well. So it's not only food provision, but also other materials, other things. And that's why I'm saying if it's money that reaches the frontline workers, then the frontline workers will shape it to the special needs that the people have. Sometimes we can only give money and they know how to deal with their needs.
I agree with what you just said, because in the conversation that we had, Ketchejian, who is one of the coordinators for Bolsa High Relief efforts for COVID, he said that they are putting together care packages, but in the second round of care packages, for example, somebody asked them to put adult diapers, something that they didn't think on their own, that they're going to need somehow.
That's very important.
Definitely there is this balance between money and also creativity and all knowledge, the qualitative sort of data.
We should never forget that we were in a very drastic state economically. Like people used to buy diapers for 16,000 per pack. Now they have to pay 34 or 40,000 depending on the size of the pack, the size of the diapers, not the size of the number of the diapers inside, but the size of the diapers. Like the bigger the sizes for the elderly, for example, they're more expensive. And that's really crazy. Milk for children, for example. If you want to buy milk for your child, then you have to pay a lot of money. Some parents are opting to reduce the amount of milk they put in the bottles. There are so many organizations, as well as the Armenian social workers, the different organizations like the Social Action Committee, they're providing milk. There are organizations, Jabit, for example, is another organization. They're providing baby milk simply because these are very expensive to buy. And if parents have to buy these things, they have to forget other things. And there is no balance to it.
Money is key in a lot of ways, sending to organizations who are providing. Christine had something to say. Yes,
I want to add something positive about the situation we are living in with all its problems and with all its negativity. There is some positive people, and what the explosion did, and before the explosion, what the coronavirus did, is that it gathered all the people together, and the human side of our fellow brothers and sisters just loomed. People started baking food at homes, and relatively better ones started to help the less fortunate. And we witness every day that ladies cook in their houses food and bring them to the poor people who need food. Our latest experience was with 50 volunteers who, with the International Labour Organization, volunteered with pocket money to go and clean the blast area, the explosion area. And they are there on a daily basis for 8 hours, cleaning the shattered glasses and the piled rocks and all the things that are on the street. Like these communal activities where they are gathered together and they are working just to rebuild the Lebanon and to reach out to the less fortunate gives us some hope that the humanity is inside each one of us. And during this tough crisis, people do let go everything, but they do hold dear all these values and they are there to help each other. This gives us hope as institutions and as Christians, as people working in the community. And really, really, we are very proud of our community members as Armenians and even all the Lebanese. And
thank you, Christine, for your comments. I have two questions, one related to the segment that you talked about, Christianity. That's from Tamar, actually. And the next one is a more technical question to probably Serop, because all of you as well, because you are working in some way, one way or another with the organizations. Let me ask the second question first, the technical question, then go back to Tamar's question. The technical question is that, is there any conflict to send money to Lebanon? Can you receive the money from the bank without any problem? Are you able to cash in without any problem if money is sent to Lebanon? That's one question, technical question. Then I'll ask the second question after the answer.
No problem. No problem. There is no problem. Yes.
Okay.
Nowadays, previously there were many problems. Now, today, there is no problem.
Okay, great. The second question, which was the first question really from Tamar, was Tamar says, because she's the director of Bible Society in Istanbul, she says that the Bible Society has a trauma healing program. Are you in any way connected or contacted by them or to them? Does anybody, any of you can comment on this? Bible Society? No, okay. So
we will be glad to be connected.
Tamar may be a liaison for you. You know, she can maybe communicate and comment the two efforts together. So this was a question by her. I think this is the end of our program. If you do not have like final comments, because it's already 1 hour and 40 minutes, 35 minutes. So again, thanks a lot for making the time to all of you. This was great. We're going to be in touch and we're going to probably have another round in maybe 2 months to just get ins and outs of the community where you are in 2 months. And we also want to do something on education, hopefully at some point in the fall, because education also has suffered a lot in our schools, preschool, primary school, secondary degree, etc., everywhere, not just in Lebanon. So that may be more of a, again, diaspora outlook. Շատ շնորհակալ վարձկերնիդ կդար, գուսամ քալիկ անգամ ավելի թյուրին հարցերում մասին խոսին եւ այս
ավելի պոզիտիվ լուրերով։
Այո, պոզիտիվ լուրերով եւ այս հայերեն գրնամ չայ մնել, այսինքն ասե, շատ մերսի, շատ շնորհակալ եմ։
Thank you, Tezia. Thank you for your time, for your efforts. It was nice meeting you, Alique.
Nice to meet you all. Thank you to all of you for all the work you're doing, and take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Bye, everyone.
I have to also thank our audience. We had maybe some 25 people steady, but I see some maybe over 1,100 people reached, I believe. Let me see how many people reached. I'll give you, 1,166 people reached. People will watch on their own time. So this was obviously during the week. Our former May program was on the weekend. So we're also testing times as to how much time people spend when. We're going to have a better probably time slot, whether this is going to be a weekday or a weekend, we will see. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our audience as well.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.